Today's guest conversation is with Mr. Jim Schwanke and my friend, partner, Jim. Wow. I can't believe I'm about to say this, but this is episode 100 of the Baseball Forward podcast. You know what? To do anything 100 times, I feel like that's got to take a little stick-to-itiveness. So
we got another 500 in us. Let's go. I mean, come on. There's a lot to talk about. Every time I go somewhere to a game, I learn something new. I mean, it's an amazing game. It really is.
Yeah, it is. Well, I want to lead off by saying this. I want to kind of reflect briefly on Baseball Forward and where we're at, what the 100 episodes has meant of the Baseball Forward podcast. I think I would start by saying this. It's been a blast. I think we started to kind of get together and conceptualize Baseball Forward and really starting to dig in on the product and what we're wanting to deliver, not just podcast, but website and our vision of moving forward. But man, it's been a really, really, the word I would use is fun. I have more energy with this endeavor than probably anything I've done in my business life. It's fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed just learning and listening and talking to you a ton. We've had so many conversations and I'm thankful for that. So as I reflect on 100 episodes, it's not just 100 episodes to me. This has been part of building the brand of Baseball Forward. But I would tell you, it's just been fun. And I think my most memorable moments are just having our conversations and talking the game of baseball and really the life that I feel that has been breathed into my baseball life from you, man. It's been a blast. So what do you think as we're sitting here almost 2 years into this thing? What's going through your mind about Baseball Forward?
Well, it started with the thoughts that came to my mind after speaking at the Texas High School Coaches Convention and having some old timers come up to me, guys that have used the stuff that we used at LSU back in the day, and said, "Coach, I still use your stuff, and Skip Bertman's stuff." And I'm going, So it all started with the idea of bringing a guy like Coach Ward, who's just a gold mine of information, and try and bring what he has to players, coaches, and parents, the stuff that we used at LSU, get involved with Skip's stuff that he used as he developed pitching staffs in his program, and basically just give it back as best we can in a economic way to as many people as we possibly can. And that's the mission. That's the thought, to give things to scouts, coaches, and players. And you get the feedback. A youth league coach the other day said, "I just want to thank you for giving me the methodology to teach my kids the strike zone in a simple drill." And the coach says, "I even had parents come up to me and go, 'Hey, thanks for teaching my kid the difference and the consequences of swinging at a bad pitch.'" Simple things that need to be practiced every day. So that's the mission.
Yeah, it is amazing. And obviously Baseball Forward, our motto is elevating the next generation. It's a beautiful thing to me when egos get out of the way, when learning is wanting to, like, I've never wanted to learn so much in my life. The older I get, the more I realize, oh my gosh, this game is so beautiful, and I want to learn as much as I can. And I want you to talk a little bit on that as you reflect on Baseball Forward. And just, the same goes for me, Coach Schwanke. I've had so much positive feedback from what we're doing. But I'm curious to get your take on get your take on that.
Well, the idea, and it goes back to a tenet of the game, is it's mano a mano. I mean, it's pitcher versus hitter, balls hit. There's consequences on every play in a baseball game that are sometimes not controllable, right? Bad hops, bad calls, wind blowing. And so as a coach, you wanted your guys to take ownership of everything that they do to try and play the game at the highest level that they can. And that's a long process. And in our world now, I mean, again, we've talked about this. You can go online and you can find 1 million hitting coaches that'll give you tons of things to think about as a parent or as a coach or as a player. But how do you implement that? How do you really teach that? And how do you have the patience to teach that? And so the bottom line is the player really has to teach themselves over time. And if you think about it, a young guy that's playing select baseball, an 8-year-old, 10-year-old, he's going to have 50 coaches in his life, right? I mean, I just watched a college game the other day, and there's 4 guys talking to one hitter in the middle of the game, right?
Woo!
And so, and then you got a catcher that goes to the mound, and then here comes the pitching coach, and then here comes the head coach, and then he goes into the dugout, and the strength guy's talking about his mechanic. And so as a player, man, our job is in our business is at Baseball Forward is to get players to understand they can coach themselves and they can be discriminatory about what they bring into their baseball world. And when they can do that, then they can use experts to help themselves, right? You look at analytics, all the stuff that's out there. I try and do my darndest to bring that back down to something that really reinforces a simplistic thing that a guy can work on. I mean, I just saw a TrackMan report on one of our guys that had an outing, and I kid you not, that spreadsheet has got 50 columns wide, of information, about this performance, and it was 75 pitches.
Jeez.
And what I got out of it is the guy threw 25 straight changes, right? And how many junior college guys or high school guys do that in a game? Well, he's taught himself to do that. And that bodes him well, because when you watch guys in the big leagues, Scooble and the guys that are really dominant, they got splitters, they got change ups, they got stuff to back hitters back and forth, speed them up, slow them down. And that's something that kids can learn. Hitters need to learn how to really be disciplined. And that takes immense pressure. Patience, excuse me. Well, there's pressure.
Both.
And that overrides the patience, trust me. And so those things are all part of what we're trying to do to elevate a player, to elevate a coach, and to elevate a parent to help the athlete become the best they can be.
You spoke to me. We had a conversation, man, a couple of years ago, and I think it was on one of the podcasts, but your message was, if your son strikes out swinging, this weekend, and he strikes out looking, and he goes back to the dugout and he says it wasn't a strike, instead of yelling at the umpires and yelling at him to swing the bat, why are we not applauding him to say, good job on coaching? Because you said patience. And I'm like, it is hard as a parent, as a coach, to say he struck out looking, and I'm gonna go full circle. My son last weekend, he struck out looking, and I wanted to punch his lights out, right? Hey, but he came into the dugout, and he said, "Dad, it wasn't a strike." What do you say to that? It was not a strike. So what comes to your mind when you hear that?
Well, again, it goes back to hunting the middle of the strike zone. And if I'm worried about a little league umpire calling my son out on a pitch this far away, and I'm leaning out to try and hit that so I don't get called out, and a guy throws one right down the middle that's the mistake that I want to hit in the big leagues when I'm 25 years old, or in Omaha in the College World Series, I jam myself, right? Man. So that's the part of the game that is simple but difficult because of what you just talked about: peer pressure, parent pressure, wanting to hit. And we've got a client named Ryan Waldschmidt who's on the verge of hopefully playing in the big leagues this year, and he'll go back and tell stories that my dad would get mad at me or question me about a pitch, and I'd say, "Dad, it wasn't a strike." Well, that paved the way for him to be so disciplined in college where his chase percentage and his whiff percentage inside the strike zone were such big positives that he elevated himself in the draft. And it's serving him at every level that he's played at in pro ball. And that goes back to being a 12-year-old and going, Dad, I'm not swinging at balls. And you can teach that very simply. You know, I had that information to a former player of mine, and we talked about first pitch focus and strike zone, you know, hitting with less than 2 strikes, and then the 2-strike approach. And he goes, should I work on that today? I said, start today. Yeah, good today. You can work on all that stuff in the middle of competition when you learn to separate practice from competition, what you're working on, and watch the kids flourish as players. And it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight, which is one of the weaknesses of our society right now is we want a quick fix immediately. All of a sudden, I'm going to make you a hitter. I'm going to make you a better pitcher. Well, competition challenges that every minute.
That's a fact. And I want to go back to one of the things we were discussing of being yourself, being the best coach for yourself. And I'll say this. I had a conversation with a college pitcher, a freshman college pitcher recently. And the conversation we had was, Ross, he's not that good of a coach. They're not that good of a coach. And I want to say this for encouragement. I think it's time, like, we set our expectations a little bit. We create more realistic expectations with when we go from, you know, select baseball to high school baseball to college to pro. I think as a player and as parents of players, you have to start having more realistic expectations on what you're going to get out of the coaches. And what his message to me was, he's not that good, and I feel like I'm not being developed. And quite honestly, it sounded a bit like an excuse to me, because I know, sitting in the stage that I'm in, I'm like, man, when it's all said and done, and you're sitting and you look back at your career, there's no chance you're going to point a finger at a coach and say it was that coach's fault that I'm not playing. There's no chance. And if you are, you weren't really a player. Okay. So I want to encourage the young guys. And this is the conversation we had. And you know what? Give the kid credit, give the parents credit, or give them a little bit of leeway, because you don't know what you don't know. So like when crap hits the fan, things get chaotic. We as humans, we naturally look for a cause. We look to blame outward versus inward. And I think the idea of coaching yourself, knowing that, hey, when I go into college, if all these recruits out here that are going to listen to this, the parents out here, don't have an expectation that Jesus Christ is going to be teaching your son how to pitch when he goes to college. He's going to learn everything that he knows. Like, these coaches, the ones we were talking about, they're young too. They're growing too. They're learning too. They don't have it. But if you have the expectation of going to college or even into pro ball and think that they're going to be the fix that you need for your career to get to the ultimate destination, you're wrong. What do you think about that, Coach?
Well, first of all, I've never met a coach that wants his player to fail.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
And that's you know, daddy coaches in select baseball. That's ex-pros that are coaching in select baseball, high school coaches. We're not in the business of wanting our guys to fail. We want them to grow, right? And to handle competition and championship moments. And that takes ups and downs and kicks in the butt and discipline and being taken out of the lineup and proving in practice before you get a chance to take a chance in a game. And then that's a roller coaster. And then the role increases in games as you're more successful. Everybody wants instantaneous pleasure, right? I want my son to go 4 for 4 in this game. Well, God bless you. Maybe it'll happen, but not likely, right? And so coaches don't want guys to fail. Now, that being said, I think in this day and age, there's tons of overcoaching that goes on.
Yep.
And you have to back off. I mean, I can literally remember at LSU, Skip Bertman going, hey, we're not swinging the bat very good. Write down everything that we're doing wrong. tonight. So by the end of the third or fourth inning, I got 2 pages of stuff that we did. Took a 1-0 fastball, things that are all wrong, supposedly. But we were up 6-1. So I walked down to him and went, "Hey, coach, I'm not doing this. I got 2 pages. We're up 6-1. We're doing far more right than we are wrong." And it changes pitch by pitch. And that's the part of the game that people don't understand. We have a guy that makes a perfect pitch. It gets jammed and it goes 120 feet for a base hit and 2-run score. Well, that was a great pitch to get the guy out. And the game said, nope, guess what? It's landing in there. So do you get the next guy out or do you walk him on 4 pitches? What do? That's a decision. That's a competitive drive that has to be taught. And if you don't teach that in practice, right? If I chase a bad pitch in a batting practice drill, and then I get 4 more right down the middle and I hammer them, what have I learned? Right? I haven't learned anything. I haven't learned the consequences of that chasing a bad pitch. And so those are things that we want guys to understand. Players by the same token, I got, hey, 1 more, my bad. All that stuff that goes on to try and eliminate the pressure of failure, eliminate it. There are no 1 mores. There are no my bads. The game tells you you're over, you're out. If I chase a pitch in batting practice and hit a dribbler, going to pitch that's this far outside back to the mound, and then I get, hey, 1 more. No, doesn't happen that way. You're out of there. And that's the discussion I had with the young coach yesterday. I said, when your guy chases a pitch that he's not looking for in BP, when you're sitting on curveballs and you throw him a fastball and he swings at it, kick him out. Really? I said, yes, because that's what will happen in a game. You're going to be out. That's right. If you do it 5 times in a row, you hit 5 hanging breaking balls. That's a great round, right? And then the other thing that's important to understand, in a normal high school or college practice, you may get 25 swings at home plate in a batting practice round. How do you, as your buddy, your player you're talking to, how do you develop getting 25 batting practice swings? You don't. You got to go in the cage with a teammate, with the other coaches, and swing the bat another 275 times that day, right? You can't, you got to do it on your own. If you want to work on a pickoff move, you got to work on it your own most of the time. You might have a PFP drill going on, but there's so much time in the game where a player can develop themselves. And our job at Baseball Forward is to give those guys some tools and things to use to do that. Yes. And then they can really look in the mirror and go, I'm doing the best I possibly can to make myself the best player I can be, because I'm paying the price. And there is a price to pay to be great. We've all seen it. And you got to do things on your own.
And that's the fun part about it, especially the fun part about baseball, or really any sport, I would imagine, is kind of getting to a point where you feel like you've mastered it, like a move, a pick, a way to throw a ball. And that's when you really start to enjoy the game. But it's the process of learning. It's a process of failing, trial and error. I want to say this to you because it came to my mind. How long has this beautiful game of baseball been played, Jim? And give me about 200 years, right? We the game has been played for a long time. Okay. What's the best, in your recollection? What's the greatest batting average in the history of the game that's been recorded? So, like, who had the highest batting average ever? I know Ted Williams, like 406. Was that in 406? Is that the highest batting average ever?
Well, I mean, Ty Cobb had the highest, career batting average of 367, right? And so that's the standard that you look at. There's several guys that hit 400 and had done that. And there's, a couple. George Brett challenged it one year, Tony Gwynn one year, but I doubt it'll ever happen again because of the game is so much different.
So here's my point. Here's my point that I want to make is if 367 is the standard, Ty Cobb all-time hit, like to me, that's almost an untouchable. You can get there potentially, but it's like, man, it's almost untouchable. And my message is to the coaches and to the parents and to the players is we've been playing this game for 200 years ish, and the greatest to ever do it, 367. So we're practicing. Why do we get so stressed when 65% of the time we know historically that you're not changing the game. The game is going to remain the same in terms of the averages. Why do we get so stressed? So I want to ask you this. The game is a game of failure. Like those statistics show you that it's a game of failure. So the message I want to know, even for myself, as you've helped with me coaching my boys, is how do you practice failure, and what does that look like? Like in a practice setting, in a parent setting, in a coaching setting, just in general. When I say, Jim, it's crucial that you learn how to fail, and you almost have to practice it. What comes to mind?
Well, you practice failure by ignoring it. All right. What you look for is clutch. And what you look for are the little things that make a hitter, a tough out. And, Skip Bertman, as opposed to Coach Ward, Skip didn't get himself involved in hitting, teaching hitting. He had a couple things that he relied on as a pitching coach to get hitters out that he didn't want our guys to do. Right. And so I can specifically remember one day, 1:30, he's walking by the cages and I'm working with Tim Lanier, who's hitting with an open stance. And he stands behind him and goes, "Hey, Tim, what's up with the open stance?" And he goes, "Coach, I've been doing it all year." And he goes, "Good, keep it up." Right. And he walks down and just walks away because he had no idea what Tim Lanier was working on. And Tim Lanier did this to put himself in a better position to get to certain pitches. And he ends up hitting a grand slam and driving 5 runs in the first game of the 1996 College World Series. And he was a 260 hitter for a long time in that year before he took off at the end and played well in clutch moments, because the work he did made him confident in that moment. The failures he endured made him stronger, right? And so what you don't want to do is beat a guy down when he fails. Don't beat him down when he fails. Ignore it. Coaching, maybe the player coaches himself to be prepared for the next pitch. I mean, it's a micro moment. If you swing at a ball in the dirt, that's a failure, right? But what do you do with the very next pitch? What do you do with the very next at bat, the very next game, right? And so you want to do your darndest as a coach, as a parent, to ignore that stuff and dwell on the positive. And that was the point of that exercise in the dugout, writing everything down wrong. We're still ahead, right? So you're going to lose. I mean, we got swept every year that we won a national championship, and on a weekend somewhere. It happens. Yep. And everybody thinks the sky's falling in. Well, there's a lot of stuff that went on to lead into that, and you have to overcome that. And we did. The games we played in Omaha weren't perfect. They're never perfect. You have to overcome the adversity that occurs in the game to evolve and become a champion, right? And that can be taught in practice if you have discipline as a player. I mean, there are times our guys at LSU would take themselves out of a batting practice round. They knew what they did wrong. Hey, I'm not waiting for him to tell me what I did. I already know. I'm out of here, right? And so those things are, and as a coach, you sit back and go, they got it, right? They got it. No more one mores, no more my bads. It starts to evolve into, I did that right. I did that right. I did that. Oh, no, I didn't. I'm out, right? And as a pitcher, as a pitcher, I mean, it's a 10 pitch inning or it's a 25 pitch inning. You got to figure out how to wiggle out of jams.
Yep.
And in today's world, a lot of pitching coaches, a lot of coaches take the kid out of the game before he ever learns how to get in and out of trouble. And that's sometimes not going to help you win a championship at the end.
Yeah, and that's a good point for coaches is maybe let the guy go through the adversity because it'll teach him. When we talk about teaching failure and expectations, like I know as a former pitcher, and something that makes sense to me, and I hope it makes sense to some other folks out listening to this, is teaching failure, letting the pitcher know, hey, there's going to be a couple moments in this game where it's going to get hairy. They're going to hit you. They might hit a couple out of the park on you. They might hit a couple of doubles. There might be some errors. It's going to happen. Like the adversity is built into the game, just like the positions are built into the game. And I feel like when that moment hits, that's the moment where you could say, hey, we've already identified this is going to happen. How do we get through it? Breathe, focus, fundamental baseball, getting through it. And I feel like for me, that is something that slows the game down, is understanding in terms of failure. It's going to happen. The hard times are going to hit in this game. And when they do, it's how do you respond? Do you have a, I'm curious what you think of, like, when you talk about failure. Is there anybody that comes to mind, like just in all your years coaching, or the guys that you watch coach that really handled guys the right way in failure, and what allowed these guys to end up being just supremely confident? Are there some coaches that stand out, and what was their behavior around the failure?
Well, I mean, obviously my mentor was Coach Ward, and I think he was such a disciplined athlete himself as a basketball player that could have played in the old NBA, and he was a catcher and a pitcher. Skip Burton was a catcher. They all started as high school coaches and learned how to deal with young kids and how to make them improve themselves. I mean, Skip Burton was running summer leagues when he was in high school, trying to help kids play more and just bring the game to everyone so they could play it. And you got to play it, right? And so now we've got an explosion of playing that, I mean, good Lord, you can play year round now, right? And throw 100 innings as a high school kid that's a freshman in high school, between summer, fall, and the high school season. If you get, if you're good enough to pitch on the varsity and you get a bunch of games in, that's a heavy load, right? And so again, you got to go back and you got to practice. As Allen Iverson said, you got to practice.
Practice.
Right? I don't need to practice. I'm too good. Well, he was great, but young kids need to practice, but they need to practice under game pressure, game speed, right? Me hitting a fungo with beautiful underspin instead of hitting one with topspin, like the ball gets hit in the game hard, isn't going to develop that player as good as it could, right? So there's a lot of things that can be done to build confidence and understand failure and making the next play if you practice full speed and you stage things full speed and you stage first and second drills and we're running full speed and we're finishing the play, and what happens? And then we're going to do it again, because you can never eliminate all the variables, but you want to be able to, I mean, the first day of practice every year was rundowns. We get a guy in a rundown, we're going to get him out, right? Second day, if we did that well, was fly ball pop-up communication. Ball goes in the air, we're going to get these guys out, right? And so then you got to practice it, and then you got to really drill it in there. And that's what happens when you start to build confidence and the ability to overcome failure. And it's really not failure, it's consequences, right? The game, it's I'm not really failing. I hit a rocket shot and I'm out. So I'm not hitting 400. I'm hitting 394. But is that a failure? No, I hit the rat's ass out of the ball, right? But I'm out. That's not failure. Those are consequences. Those are events that happen in the game. And if I handle them the right way, I mean, I watched a young man, and we're going to have scouts on here. We're going to have guys that are involved in pro baseball on here.
Already have.
Talking about, but we're, body language. I watched a young man take BP. He has no idea who I am. He's a high profile player. He hits the ball in the net several times in the batting cage, goes over and sits down in a chair like he's totally defeated, frustrated. And I'm going, if I'm a scouting director and I was here to watch him play, and I saw that, I'm going, how is he going to handle what you call failure in the minor leagues over a 150 game schedule with a bunch of people that are better than him or as good as him and don't really care about him? He's going to have to handle those consequences or he won't make it in professional baseball. And so that's what we're trying to do. And that's what I hope you're trying to do with your kids and your young team that you're involved with now. I'm trying to help them understand what they need to be like when they're 24 years old. And sometimes that's a hard picture for a lot of people to see.
Interesting that you bring that up because boy, we're in a really hot part of the season. Let me say this. Go visit baseballforward.com. We have memberships that'll help you with we have what's called our mind map library, our content library, Ward's Wisdom. Guys, just a ton of content to help you get better with the game of baseball. But visit baseballforward.com. You can get in touch with Coach Schwanke, with me. But I encourage you to go visit the site and check out everything that we have to offer. But interesting, as we're on episode 100, Ross Hawley, Jim Schwanke, we're in an interesting time of the season. You're out, man. You're out watching baseball all the time. I'm out coaching it, playing it, sometimes watching it. So you're out watching, you're out evaluating guys, and Jim, what you do is it's a business, man. Like you're out evaluating guys, and you guys are essentially deciding what you're boiling it down to is how are these guys going to get paid? Who's going to get paid, and how much are they going to get paid? And who do we need to hook our line to? As a guy that's out evaluating talent, give the audience some of the main bullet points that you look for in that are tried and true over the test of time. Give us some ideas of what you go out and you evaluate when you're looking at a player.
Wow, that's a loaded question. Obviously, we go out there now. When I coached at Oklahoma State and we recruited to Oklahoma State, that was a unique situation. We were in the Big 8, Big 12, and it was a small stadium, and we had to find guys that were willing to pay the price to come to Stillwater. So we had to evaluate everybody and then figure out who could come. And then I went to LSU, and Skip had already blown the program up. And now I went into the Texas Junior College All-Star game and went, I want him to visit. I want him to visit. And they came, right? Yep. It was like being in a candy store.
Beautiful.
And now I'm in a business where we're trying to figure out who has a chance to play in the big leagues, get to the big leagues, and stay in the big leagues. And so that's how I go into every game that I go watch, whether it's our clients or someone that we're looking to get involved with. And so you have to look forward all the time. And you want to see how the athlete interacts with his teammates, how the parents handle adversity, things that aren't going right in the game, to see how he handles that. And then obviously you got to look at the talent. And if a guy's swinging at stuff all over the place and banging his bat in a bat rack when he comes back, those things are going to show up later as a pro maybe. And so you've got to really look at those kinds of things. The talent, is pretty much evident most of the time. Mm-hmm. from a pitching standpoint, it's pretty easy to evaluate what's going on. And now you've got, I mean, good Lord, you go to a high school game now and you got synergy set up all over the place where they're capturing data. Schools have TrackMan information. Every college has it. And so you get all these analytics that get added into what the old eyeballs see. And it gives you a pretty good chance to pinpoint guys that have a chance. But the funny part of the business is if you go back 15 years, 10 years, and look at the first round draft picks and see how many of those guys became stars and long-term big leaguers, you talk about failure. There's a lot of guys that, that don't make it, that were projected to make it. And what's the differential? That's amazing. And what happens is they start to compete against their equals. And those small mental toughness, overcoming things that you saw when they were 18 years old, they have to show up then, because the talent at the top of the pyramid becomes so close that the guy that manhandled the game as a 12-year-old, as a 14-year-old, he's playing against guys that are looking him right in the eyeball and let's play, buddy. Right.
Yep.
And so that becomes a differential that you sometimes, a lot of guys miss. And scouting's an imperfect science. There's no question about it. I mean, you had a great arm. Why didn't you make it? Right. A guy that you thought was not going to make it makes it. And it's crazy. The business is crazy. The game is crazy. And so when you go back down and you start looking at select baseball games and you look at guys that are dominant youth league players, are they still learning things that are going to help them when they're 24? Or are they just simply so good at that age? And I think it's important for players that are athletic, strong, physical as 12-year-olds to get challenged by coaches to do things physically and mentally and practice the game the right way at full speed so they continue to develop. And then you got the young guy that has great actions, the little guy that has great actions, and they grow. And all of a sudden they're dead even in high school. They're dead even in college. And who's whipping who?
It's interesting to hear that because you said continue to develop. One of the things that is hard for me to watch is a player who feels like he has figured the game out. And it's, to me, that's pretty evident when they're not really good to their teams, their teammates. They're not really listening to what the coaches are saying. They're not trying to grow their knowledge of the game, and they're not trying to continue to develop. Because if you're not trying to master this every single time out, I'm just going to say, I'll say the recent Max Clark sighting in spring training, and I don't have to get into it because obviously he's a stud. But even as the things as small as how do you present yourself? Are you trying to develop as a person so that you can handle the failure or the adversity later? I find it to me, it's when I asked you, I said, hey, what are you looking out when you're watching the guys that you're evaluating, and what are you watching out of the players? And you said you look forward. I want the guys that are just mature enough to be able to handle it and realize, you know what, it's not that big of a deal. I'm going to go out and do my job, and I'm going to be a good teammate. I'm going to put my head down, and I'm going to work. I look at Ryan Walshman, and I'm like, that guy's a stud because of how he handles his business. How he does anything is how he does everything. Let's transition into some advice you have as we wind this episode 100 of the Baseball Forward podcast down. Jim, what's your most favorite thing that you like about me?
Probably your attitude and your nonstop enthusiasm. I mean, you're a live wire. I would, and the fact that you want to keep, learning, and so do I, right?
It's unbelievable.
And I think back to we had a player that came to Oklahoma State named Roberto Lopez. And Roberto was told by he was a junior Olympian for Puerto Rico. And he was told by the execs there that, he's not going to be on the Olympic team, so go to college, right? So he comes to Oklahoma State. He's a switch hitter, got no juice, left-handed, great player, real athletic little guy, runs well. And so we needed to develop his swing. And so Roberto stayed in Stillwater over the summer, and we made him teach top hand self-toss drills.
Love it.
To our campers. Top hand self-toss to develop this hand, because obviously you're a right-hand thrower, switch hitter. This is the dominant side. You're going to hit 70% of the time. And it was weak. So he taught kids the drills that he needed to learn. And by the end of the summer and the next year, he became an All-American, was a 4th-round draft pick, was in AA All-Star games, and he blew his knee out and he couldn't play anymore. But watching him teach himself and teammates and kids the things that he needed to work on was a lesson that I brought forward with me as a coach, because I had our guys demonstrate the drills to each other so that I knew I was teaching them the right way and that they could teach each other, right? And we've talked about self-toss fungos. If I get a bucket of balls and I self-toss fungos to the other shortstop, I'm working on my swing. I'm hitting the ball harder to him, and he's fielding harder hit balls. And all of a sudden, we're both getting better. And that part of it goes on all the time. And coaches today, if you can find a way to open your facilities and get people to let your guys work out on their own, some of these great high school programs, they all have keyed locks, and they get into these cages and they hang out there and they hit, for an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's better than getting in trouble somewhere else.
That's right.
As opposed to some school districts who they keep everything under lock and key, and you can't get to them. I mean, my high school coach would come up and sit with us and let us hit for 3 hours.
That's the best.
Well, let's get that going again. And if you're a high school coach, find out how to do that for your kids, and let your parents come up there and bring their kids up there. And a guy that does lessons brings 3 of them up there, get them on the field, let them hit, right? Set the players free to explore and develop themselves. And if they damage something, hold them accountable, consequences, right? But open that stuff up. And when you do that, when Roberto Lopez focuses on one drill to make himself better, he becomes confident and he becomes an All-American, right? And he wouldn't have done that if I just would have told him, hey, you got to go work on this. And he didn't do it. But we put him in a situation where he had to do it. And when you find players, when you look for players, and they will do that on their own, and they will bring teammates with them, then you got a guy that's a leader and a guy that's going to help his team win. That's special.
That's a lot for me asking you what you like about me. I'm going to tell you what I like about you, Mr. Jim. Hey, you are what you just said, how you ignore, like you are the way you are always wanting to learn, and the way that you teach so thoughtfully and slow and intentional with your words is something like a live wire like me needs. Because
I can't help you with that.
Yes, you can. You better. But I want to give you that credit, and I think you have an amazing family. I'm so, and I'm just thankful to be around you, to be around this, because to me, man, this is as good as it gets. So enough of the rah stuff. All right, finish with this. Baseball advice to parents listening to the Baseball Forward podcast.
All right. So I got a story. So I'm going to see a family here in Dallas, and it's a meeting at their house. And this is a special player. I've watched him play a couple, 3 years of growing up around here with select stuff. And I pull up to the house, and there's like 4 cars in the street in front of their house. And I'm going, wow, I wonder if they're having a dinner party or something here. And I go inside and we sit down and we talk. And the dad says, let's show you something out here. I want you to show how hard my son works. And I go out in the garage. There's no cars in the garage. There's a net. There's all kinds of gadgets on the ground. And he goes, we set this up 2 years ago for our son. And he is in here every night, Jim. And he's coming home. He's not even there yet. He's coming home from a weight training session. Right. And I went, wow, this is pretty impressive. I said, yeah, we don't park in the garage, obviously. And in Texas, that's pretty risky because we got hailstorms and all kinds of stuff that happen. But that's the sacrifice that those parents made for that player. Now, the dad didn't teach him how to hit. The dad didn't work with him. The kid did all this work on his own in his garage, right? And he ended up going to the University of Texas, ended up playing in the big leagues for a long time. And I think back to that setting where the dad and the mom sacrificed things without trying to coach him to give him a chance to develop himself. And he did. And so that's the thing that you have to understand as a parent. I went through it. You gotta sit back and you gotta let things happen naturally. And you got to trust the people that are coaching your son, because again, they don't want him to fail. They want him to get better, right? Now, if they're doing things that they're risking health and things of kids, then go to a different team. But don't go to a different team because you want them to be the shortstop. Because guess what? When you show up and you sign a pro contract, or you show up at the University of Texas or Alabama, there's 2 shortstops ahead of you already. Amen. You got to win the job at some point. You go into pro ball, there might be 20 shortstops in an organization, and you got to win. And the guy playing in the big leagues might be Derek Jeter, and he's going to play for 20 years. So what are you going to do, right? You can't move. You got to get better. You got to change positions. You got to do things and allow, as a select player, dad, to just let you move your kid around. Find the best place. Let them trust the guys that are coaching your kid, right? And so those things are important as a parent to watch. And I go, I've got family members now, and I go to the ballpark and I hear some of the craziest stuff. I really think we should, and we will. I've got, a list of cliches.
Yeah.
And yelling at your son or your daughter in a softball setting during an at-bat doesn't really help, right? Let the coach him. Let the player coach himself. Let him handle that moment. And your anxiety needs to evaporate. You need to play blind eye to failure. Again, we talked about striking out on pitches this far outside when a 19-year-old high school student's umpiring a game and it's 105 degrees outside. Hey, come on. The point is now in the big leagues, everything's this size and it's monitored. Yeah. And if you don't chase, you're going to walk. And you can learn that when you're 12 years old.
Man,
let your kid learn that stuff.
That's beautiful advice. And just to the last piece that you said, think about that, what you just said. The strike zone is now monitored ABS. I watched Skeens punch out Matt Olson the other day, and it was a backdoor, whatever the heck Skeens throws, and it didn't hook the edge of the strike zone, and it was off by a 0.1 of a. It was a ball, so my point in saying that is, if you have an understanding of the strike zone, you can do some damage as a hitter. Sure. Jim Schwanke, let's finish with this episode 100 of the Baseball Forward Podcast. Let's talk about music. I love music. You love music. You love music, and you do. And I tell Jim Schwanke, he reminds me of Bill Walton, that big deep voice. And you should have been a radio DJ like Hawk or Wolfman or whatever. All right, let's talk about music. let's give me names of 3 bands that you're like, man, if this is my last day on earth, I got to listen to these got this music today. Give me the names of 3 bands in that context.
Well, Eric Clapton and whatever group he was in at the time, Santana and Stevie Ray Vaughan. Those would be the guys that I'd probably listen to.
Give me do you like, man, those are all great. Favorite Santana song would be?
Well, the one that he won the Grammy for, I can't remember the name of it.
Smooth.
Yeah, that might be it.
You like that song?
Oh yeah.
Evil Ways. I like that, Evil Ways, and I actually have the record, one of his records. That's good stuff, Jim. Hey, you know what? I'm going to say those are all very qualified candidates to finish your your final day on Earth. That's it, man. That's all I have. Jim Schwanke, it's a pleasure. Guys, we cannot thank you enough for all of the downloads and all of the social views. And it is going to be a ton more. We're excited. We're live wires. And we thank you so much. Baseball Forward, episode 100. We'll see you guys very soon.